Hey guys, Ryan Fowler here with the Inner Game Group, MindChrysalis Live, here with Jordan Kurtz, Tim Costello, both certified hypnotists, and me, humble me. Today we're going to get like deep into the technical aspects of what neuroplasticity is and how hypnosis is one of the top and absolutely the easiest to use neuroplasticity tool out there. We have a really good presentation by Dr. Huberman where he is broken into two parts. He's going to talk about hypnosis and how it's such a great neuroplasticity tool. And then we're going to really dive into the neuroscience of what neuroplasticity is. It's really just your brain's ability to change itself. And we use it, what we do is we use it at a very high degree. And if you guys want to experience it for yourself, you can do it for free because we have a program that uses your brain's neuroplasticity at a high degree to actually change parts of your brain that is holding you back. And you can see it right here. You can go here to my MindChrysalis platform on school.com. It's the link is in the description, school.com/MindChrysalis-7138. You join there's a community of people helping each out. See, here's a guy asking a question. 2 people have responded. So people are helping each other use this program. This is all free, by the way. We have people, yes, we have paid sessions, paid, self-hypnosis program, but this is free and this is still powerful. We have people getting their procrastination from 9 out of 10 down to 3 out of 10 just by using this program. Just other stuff, just dissipating. People improving their lives with this program. So you sign up. Once you sign up, go to the classroom, Subconscious Optimization 101. Try it out for yourself. See how powerful when you apply the concepts of neuroplasticity in a very purposeful way, it will change your life. And you can try it out for free. So definitely check that out. But before we get in any deeper, Jordan, Tim, welcome to the show. Introduce yourselves.
Hello, I am a little under the weather, Jordan Kurtz, but the show must go on. I do hypnosis. I help you locate your maladaptive subconscious beliefs, remove them, and put in and reinforce positive subconscious beliefs.
Beautiful. And I'm Tim Costello with clearthattrauma.com. Part of what we're going to talk about today with this neuroplasticity is the ability to change your brain for the better. And it doesn't happen by accident. It's a very focused effort, and we're going to help you through understanding that today.
All right, very good. Thank you, Tim. So without further ado, we want to show you some meaty clips. They're really going to raise your interest level about this right off the bat. Ryan Harrison has done hypnosis and sessions with me, and he's seen the benefits. In fact, there was a client interview with this guy in the video section of my YouTube channel. Watch it because he's used normal techniques that did very little for him, and then we really, really helped him with this stuff. So welcome to the show, Ryan. The Brain That Changes Itself. I haven't read it. Sounds very interesting. But let's go ahead and dive in. Let's start with this first juicy clip here. This is going to be Mike Tyson talking to Andrew Huberman about hypnosis and how it is, when it's done correctly, it's actually a very targeted, very effective way to use neuroplasticity to actually profoundly change parts of your brain. And honestly, this is where the mainstream mental health industry, they need to freaking catch up. They need to start integrating this stuff because when their techniques came out, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectic therapy, all that stuff, they didn't even know the brain was neuroplastic as adults. So they don't use any of these techniques, and that is to their detriment. Honestly, they need to get with the program, but you can get with the program now. But we'll show you this. This is really cool. So here we go. Oh, sorry. It's oh, darn it. There we go. Turn on the sound. Every time I click refresh, it turns the sound off. It's annoying. In fact, I'm going to do that again to get at the beginning. And, you know, Instagram, you suck. You suck on desktop Instagram, but all right. See, it turned the sound off again. All right, here we go.
It gets a bad rap because the name, people think, oh, it's someone trying to control you. Yeah. But hypnosis is really just a state of
you controlling you.
Exactly. It's self-hypnosis is deep relaxation plus suggestion. And what the goal of hypnosis is, you know, we hear about meditation designed to clear the mind, calm you. You hear about yoga, okay, etc. But hypnosis is like a meditation designed to change your brain in a specific way, what we call neuroplasticity. You know, your brain is amazing because unlike the rest of your body, which can change somewhat, muscles and tendons and stuff, your brain can change itself. Hypnosis, you know, it gets a bad rap because the name.
Okay, so the reason Mike Tyson said your hypnosis is you controlling you, the reason he knows that, go to the Wikipedia page of his coach, Cus D'Amato. Cus D'Amato did hypnosis multiple times, several times on Mike Tyson. It was one of the big tools, part of his secret weapon, one of his secret weapons to make him a world champion. Mike Tyson knows hypnosis works because it helped him. And so, Tim, Jordan, any comments on this first clip, hypnosis for neuroplasticity?
Go ahead, Jordan.
Well, I find it very, my initial reaction is it's very promising. Like the fact that it's not, the brain isn't static, that you can change you. That should be encouraging for anyone who wants to change and doesn't believe that they're not fixed. I mean, it's very, to me, it's like empowering to understand that that's even possible. And so, of course, then you have to understand the methods to do it. But I mean, like even as an adult, you know, I think he's going to go into, in the following clip, we'll talk about, people thought the brain's only elastic up until you're like 25. And it's like, oh, well, whoops, I'm almost 25. Am I going to be stuck this way forever? It's like, no, of course not.
Yeah,
you
good
could change
point.
it
Now,
at 65 or 70. You just have to do special techniques. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
One of the things I want to cover about this particular Huberman clip is, what was the genesis of it? Why are they talking about control? Okay, so hypnosis in the world today is generally referred to as stage hypnosis. The people that get on stage and the hypnotist finds people who are very suggestible and want to have fun, and it looks like he's controlling them by suggesting them that they want to cluck like a chicken, bark like a dog, or something like that. So it appears as though the hypnotist is controlling those people, when in essence, those people were very suggestible. They wanted to have a good time. They wanted to have fun, and they're very easily able to make that. So the reason Huberman talks about control is because of that. Now, the reality is, during hypnosis, an actual serious hypnosis session, you are in 100% control. Nobody's controlling you. I mean, when I'm talking to somebody and I'm talking to their subconscious, they're still in control. I'm just guiding them through the process of doing what we're going to be talking about today, and that is changing the brain permanently. Thank you.
Yeah. And we don't heal or fix anyone. We guide people to fix themselves. Hypnosis is you controlling you and you fixing you. We're just guiding you through the process. And in fact, you take the online course, you listen to a self-hypnosis audio. That's how I found hypnosis 11 years ago. I was listening to an audio of a lady speaking on a recording, Fix Myself. So you really are doing the work. P-Dubs, welcome to the show.
What's up, P-Dubs?
And Ryan Harrison, yep, welcome to the show as well. Mentioned you earlier. So we're going to get into the main clip that really goes into the science. I mean, you're going to use all the technical terms as to how neuroplasticity works. Neuroplasticity, what it is, how it works, what are the brain chemicals, the neurotransmitters such as acetylcholine that need to be activated, and how do you activate them in order to put your brain, you know, you're no longer a child. Children's brain are just automatically neuroplastic, but for us, we need to do some very specific things to make our brain neuroplastic to then change these deep down subconscious beliefs, feelings, or other aspects of our brain. So he's going to go into the deep technical stuff. Now, for those of you who don't know, Andrew Huberman, go to his YouTube channel. It's amazing. He has like 5 million subscribers. He is a Stanford neuroscientist. There's another Stanford psychiatrist who's also a hypnotist he's interviewed on his show, talks about hypnosis. But what's really interesting is the theoretical, the scientists know in theory how this works. There's very few people, I would say Melanie, Tony Evans, us, Marissa Peer, and Joe Dispenza. He covers a different aspect of neuroplasticity. We're into fixing bad subconscious programs. He's about using your brain to get your body to heal itself, among other things, and manifest certain things. There's very few people who are actually applying the theories that Huberman puts forth. The mainstream certainly isn't. And that's why, I mean, their techniques at most, CBT at most works on half of people. Half people doesn't work on at all. You're in therapy for a year, didn't do shit for you. I mean, it's ridiculous that they have this theory and they don't fricking use it. But we're going to show you that this isn't woohoo. This isn't just something we pulled out of our butt. There's a Stanford neuroscientist here who's going to lay down. There's hardcore science behind this, and they've known this for decades. So let's, although they have gained great understanding as they've gone along into how all this works. And so here we go. I really like this guy. He's a freaking rock star in my mind. And we'll just play it and comment. There's about 10, 15 minutes of real good meat here. So here we go. Neuroplasticity, how to focus to change your brain.
That what it's doing is it's measuring the amount of activity for a given part of our body, one eye or the other, or our fingers, this finger or that finger. And all of those inputs means is that to get, it might seem like kind of a stinger, but it actually turns out to be a great advantage. One of the key experiments that David and Tornson did was an experiment where they closed both eyes, where they essentially removed all visual input early in development. Now, this is slightly different than blindness because it was transient. It was only for a short period of time. But what they found is when they did that, there was no change. However, if they closed just one eye, there was a huge change. So when people tell you, oh, at the end of today's lecture or at the end of something, your brain is going to be completely different, that's simply not true. If you're older than 25, your brain will not change unless there's a selective shift in your attention or a selective shift in your experience that tells the brain it's time to change.
Boom.
That is extremely important. And this is what your average life coach, what your average therapist does not do. They don't change the state of your brain. They don't do the things necessary to make your brain neuroplastic so you can, like that, change parts of you that make you struggle in your brain. That's where hypnosis comes in. There's other techniques you can use too. You can put electrodes on your brain and send electricity to certain parts. You can take certain drugs that make your brain release certain neurotransmitters, you know, or listen to a freaking audio as much as you want and do it all on your own, or get one of us to guide you to help you develop that skill, you know, or, I mean, when we guide you, you're going to get results very first session. For about 95% of people will get results first session as we guide you through it. About 80% are going to do the free self-hypnosis program and are going to see results. But about 20%, you know, people are on a spectrum. Some people aren't as connected to their feelings or certain parts of their brain. Some people aren't as introspected. So they need that one-on-one guidance. But still, 70-80% of people, just even the do-it-yourself free stuff on our school MindChrysalis platform, see big results. We'll keep going. You've got to change the state of your brain. Yeah, Tim and Jordan, go ahead.
So he talks about a focus, and we did a show a little while back where one very prominent, and I don't remember if she was a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but she talks about how we are born into this world in a theta state. In other words, our brain waves are very low frequency in a very high neuroplasticity environment. What's key and what Huberman is relaying to is that you now need to go back to that theta state in order to make that brain neuroplastic. And we'll talk about some other things in a minute, but it's key that we get back there. The way we get back to that theta state is hypnosis.
Okay. Anything to add, Jordan?
I just is like all these scientists we cover, it's like they're lining up the pins like, oh, you need to be in theta state. You need to have neuroplasticity, subconscious programs. It's just like,
And they don't do it.
I'm
It's not
surprised.
applied. Very rarely applied. Go ahead. Sorry.
Nobody else has connected all the dots. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't, it's like they're trying not to see the pattern.
Well, there's a lot of funding out there that doesn't support this pattern.
Mhm.
Andrew Huberman is not a practitioner. He's a professor. He's a researcher. He gets the data, and then people need to apply it, and that has not happened yet. So neuroplasticity can supercharge your ability to learn and integrate new things or change things that are already in you at a very, very rapidly accelerated rate. So next time you want to acquire a new skill or change a bad habit, ask yourself, are you using the concepts to make your brain neuroplastic to rapidly absorb or change, absorb new data, get it in your core, get in your subconscious, or change things in you? Are you using neuroplasticity? If not, then the effectiveness of what you're studying, learning, your ability to absorb it is a fraction of what it could otherwise be.
Yep.
And if you're not doing that, please consider what we have to say, because this concept is incredibly powerful. I'm not kidding, and I'm not exaggerating. We'll keep going.
Roll on.
Roll on, rock and roll, baby. All right.
And those changes occur through the ways I talked about before: strengthening and weakening of particular connections. They have names like long-term potentiation, long-term depression, which has nothing to do with emotional depression, by the way, spike timing dependent plasticity. I throw out those names not to confuse you, but for those of you that would like more in-depth exploration of those, please, you can go Google those and look them up. They're great Wikipedia pages for them, and you can go down the paper trail. I might even touch on them in some subsequent episodes. But the important thing to understand is that if we want something to change, we really need to bring an immense amount of attention to whatever it is that we want to change. This is very much linked to the statement I made earlier about it all starts with an awareness. Now, why is that attention important? Well, David and Torsten won their Nobel Prize, and they certainly deserved it. They probably deserve two, because they also figured out how vision works. And I might be biased because they're my scientific great-grandparents, but I think everybody in the field of neuroscience agrees that Hubel and Wiesel, as they're called, H&W for those in the game, absolutely deserved a Nobel Prize for their work, because they really unveiled the mechanisms of brain change, of plasticity. David passed away a few years ago. Torsten's still alive. He's in his late 90s. He's still at the Rockefeller University. He's sharp as a tack. He still jogs several miles a day. He's really into art and a number of other things. He's also a super nice guy. Hubel was a really nice guy as well. It's also, he was a great Frisbee player, I discovered, because he beat me in a game of Ultimate when he was like 80, which still has me a little bit irked. But anyway, Hubel and Wiesel did an amazing thing for science that will forever change the way that we think about the brain. However, they were quite wrong about this critical period thing. The critical period was this idea that if you were to deprive the nervous system of an input, say closing one eye early in development, and the rest of the visual cortex is taken over by the representation of the open eye, that you could never change that unless you intervened early. And this actually formed the basis for why a kid that has a lazy eye or a cataract, why, even though there's some issues with anesthesia in young children, why now we know that you want to get in there early and fix the cataract or fix the strabismus. That's what ophthalmologists do. However, their idea that you had to do it early or else there was no opportunity to rescue the nervous system deficit later on turned out wasn't entirely true. In the early 90s, a graduate student by the name of Greg Reckenzone was in the laboratory of a guy named Mike Merzenich at UCSF. And they set out to test this idea that if one wants to change their brain, they need to do it early in life because the adult brain simply isn't plastic. It's not available for these changes. And they did a series of absolutely beautiful experiments. By now, I think we can say proving that the adult brain can change provided certain conditions are met.
That's very important. The adult brain, now we're not we're talking about literally rewiring neurons and connections in your brain. That's what neuroplasticity is. And it can be done quickly like that. But certain conditions have to be met. You can't just sit on a couch talking to someone and expect neuroplasticity to be in there. As a child, that's how children were. But as adults, you got to do certain things. And then when you do, your brain can become neuroplastic. Anything to add, guys?
Yeah.
No. Yep.
We're
Go
gonna
ahead,
go through what he's gonna go through specifics, by the way, of what you need to do to make it neuroplastic. But go ahead.
At the beginning of the clip, he was like, you can change it if you have an immense amount of focus on it. It's like, well, wait, like that's one of the tools we use in hypnosis is, regression to cause, where we have clients focus intensely on that feeling tied to the narrative, the subconscious program. And so again, I talked earlier about all the pieces, lining up, why this works. There's another one.
Yeah. What hypnosis does is it quiets down your prefrontal cortex. It doesn't make you unconscious. You're still conscious, but it quiets down the analytical brain and brings the subconscious and the limbic system part of your brain to the forefront. It's enhancing the alertness and the focus of your subconscious. And then we focus on specific emotions, specific beliefs, get hyper focused on that in hypnosis, while the alertness and therefore neuroplasticity of your subconscious goes up. It's like closing one eye of your conscious mind to increase the alertness of other parts of your brain. Anything to add, Tim?
Yeah. So the word focus really gets misconstrued throughout the industry in a very easy manner. And that is that if you consciously focus on something, you're going to be able to overwhelm the thing that's troubling you or not serving you. And there's many practitioners out there with charts and tasks and functions and things to do during the day and so on and so forth to help you cognitively overcome something. It does help you cope to a certain level, but in reality, you never change your brain. You just sort of give yourself an activity to distract you away from the thing that doesn't serve you. The sad thing is that eventually, left to your own and no longer doing those tasks, that subconscious programming will come back into the game and it will control because it's stronger, persistent, and running at a higher frequency than your conscious world.
Yeah, very good. 100% agree, Tim. And guys, put this in Google right now. In fact, I'm going to put it in Google. I just put it in Google. I'll show it to you. I just put in Google, asking Google, what % of our behavior is subconscious, is from our subconscious brain? Oops. Let's see here. And let's see what Google says. Boom, right there. 95% of our behavior, or 95% of our brain activity, is unconscious. That's pretty much a synonym for subconscious, by the way. And this includes habits, patterns, creativity, emotions, all of that's coming from our subconscious mind, our cognitive biases. And it's not just this. You can scroll down. There's Auburn University. They're talking about it. There's Harvard Business Review. Quora, they talk about it. Yeah. So some say 90%, some say 95, predominantly 95. So when you're trying to learn something new or change a habit or change something about your behavior, if you use solely cognitive methods, you're looking at 5%. If you get this in your subconscious, you're looking at 95%. It's just way more effective. Now, you can consciously do something over and over and over and over and over, repetition, and that helps. That will increase effect. It'll start seeping into your subconscious. You do something enough times and you just kind of automatically do it now, maybe without even thinking. Like, I studied many years playing guitar. After a while, a lot of this becomes automatic. It does seep into subconscious, but it takes a long time. Neuroplasticity is about, boom, it changed. It's in there. typically for me, 1 session, or even with self-hypnosis, 1 session. If you need more proof, go to the video section of this YouTube channel. There's about 24 client interviews. I have another 3 to put up. And honestly, I got another 10 audio. I got another 30 written. I got another 5 or 6 where they won't let me put it up because it's too private. We've done this for hundreds of people. Hundreds and hundreds of people have done this. It really does work. So back to Dr. Huberman breaking it down for us. Here we go.
Now, the experiments they did are tough. They were tough on the experimenter and they were tough on the subject. I'll just describe one. Let's say you were a subject in one of their experiments. You would come into the lab and you'd sit down at a table and they would record from or image your brain and look at the representation of your fingers, the digits, as we call them. And there would be a spinning drum, literally a stone drum in front of you, or metal drum that had little bumps. Some of the bumps were spaced close together. Some of them were spaced far apart. And they would do these experiments where they would expect their subjects to press a lever whenever, for instance, the bumps got closer together or further apart. And these were very subtle differences. So in order to do this, you really have to pay attention to the distance between the bumps. And these were not Braille readers or anyone skilled in doing these kinds of experiments. What they found was that as people paid more and more attention to the distance between these bumps, and they would signal when there was a change by pressing a lever, as they did that, there was very rapid changes, plasticity in the representation of the fingers. And it could go in either direction. You could get people very good at detecting the distance between bumps, that the distance was getting smaller or the distance was getting greater. So people could get very good at these tasks that are kind of hard to imagine how they would translate to the real world for a non-Braille reader. But what it told us is that these maps of touch were very much available for plasticity. And these were fully adult subjects. They're not taking any specific drugs. They don't have any impairments that we're aware of. And what it proved is that the adult brain is very plastic. And they did some beautiful control experiments that are important for everyone to understand, which is that sometimes they would bring people in and they would have them touch these bumps on this spinning drum, but they would have the person pay attention to an auditory cue. Every time a tone would go off or there was a shift in the pitch of that tone, they would have to signal that. So the subject thought they were doing something related to touch and hearing. And all that showed was that it wasn't just the mere action of touching these bumps. They had to pay attention to the bumps themselves. If they were placing their attention on the auditory cue, on the tone, well, then there was plasticity in the auditory portion of the brain, but not on the touch portion of the brain. And this really spits in the face of this thing that you hear so often, which is every experience that you have is going to change the way your brain works. Absolutely not. The experiences that you pay super careful attention to are what open up plasticity, and it opens up plasticity to that specific experience. So the question is,
so if you're trying to learn anything, or you're getting any sort of coaching, or you go to a therapist or whatever, and they're not doing any sort of exercises to get you super focused and aware on the specific thing you want to change, guess what? Neuroplasticity isn't engaged, and your ability to absorb this, not just hear it and cognitively understand it, to actually absorb it into your internal belief system, internal behavior matrix, your habits, etc. Your ability is very low if you're not using these special methods. Very low to actually absorb it. This is why people will read 100 self-help books and have minimal improvement in their lives.
Yep.
It's why.
So one of the key things he talks about there was focusing on that experience. And he's going to talk in just a few seconds about another thing that we'll focus on. But the key is, and one of the things that Jordan, Ryan, and I, and a few others do, is we call it a refocus on the traumas that are holding you back or not serving you. And there's always usually one or two major traumas that need to be really focused on in order for others to be eliminated as well. So we focus on very specific experiences from your past, generally your childhood, mostly up until the age of 7 or 8, but could be all the way to the age of about 14. But like Huberman says, between 14 and 25, there's just a little tiny bit left that's changing. And by the time you're 25, you're pretty much, and I'm going to put it in quotes, set in stone. But the reality is you can change that. But for most of the world, they're set in stone. So we focus on that particular experience that causes you not to serve yourself well.
Yeah. Now, also, I believe at some point in his presentation, he mentions that by about age 15, 98% of your subconscious is set in stone. So the neuroplasticity, the natural neuroplasticity that is just your natural state, really starts to decline at about 15, except in some areas it continues to age 25. There is actually one part of our brain that stays neuroplastic till about age 60, 65, and that is the part of the brain that basically has this wisdom of what matters and what doesn't matter, what's important in life. And so, people by age 60, 65, they have much better understanding of, likes and follows on Instagram don't mean crap. They really know what's more important by that age, because that part of our brain actually continues developing to about 60, 65-ish. Yeah. So, all right, good stuff. Good time. Good comments, guys. Go ahead.
Go, Jordan, go.
Yeah, my thought was, unfortunately, the bad news is for us multitaskers who like to try and do learning and another thing at once. I think he's proving that the brain does not really change that well, which is probably explains why I didn't do as well in my which class? It wasn't thermo, it was fluid dynamics, because I slept through most of those classes, so it probably is an indicator of why I was struggling. But
yeah, he later says that you can play subliminal messages while you're sleeping. It actually won't change your brain.
Doesn't do any good.
And that makes sense.
It does some,
and that
but
makes
if you already have good things in your brain, then while you're sleeping, the affirmations can reinforce them, but you won't make changes while you sleep.
Right.
From listening to subliminal messages.
And I bring that up because he says, well, when they're trying to focus on the sound, at the same time they're trying to push the buttons and notice the distance between them, that's when the brain was less neuroplastic. And so the takeaway for me is, if I'm really trying to learn something, get rid of all the other distractions, because and that's kind of what we do in hypnosis, is we kind of eliminate those conscious distractions. We focus more on this, on the
focus on one thing.
Yeah, the key about that experiment, you're right on, Jordan, was the focus. If they focused on the auditory tone, that's where their focus was. If they focused on the bumps, that's where their focus was. And either one of those provided that neuroplasticity for the bumps or for the auditory, but not both.
Yeah. You don't make your whole brain neuroplastic. You make one part you're focusing on neuroplastic.
Right. And that's
CBT
key.
might take that and go, well, that's why CBT says, there we go. You just focus on it. You can change it. It's like, well,
that's actually one of 3 components. There's actually 3 that are needed. He's just going over the first one right now.
Yep.
Yeah. Honestly, CBT does not use neuroplasticity at all, in my opinion. Correct me if I'm
cognitive.
wrong.
In its title, it's not using subconscious. It says it's a
They're not focused on the subconscious. Behavioral, on the cognitive, wrong area.
It's cognitive behavioral therapy. It's focusing on activities and things that you can do while you're awake and you're conscious and you're thinking about them to cope with or overwhelm something that's creeping out of your subconscious. And it never really works. Ryan, we just lost your camera.
Yeah, I know. Can you still hear me?
You're probably getting better at at increasing the neuroplasticity of the conscious part of the brain to address those things. But you aren't. So you are still using the effects of neuroplasticity, just not on the useful part of the brain.
Correct.
That you want.
And some people come out of those sessions. Again, the gold standard is, of all the people that attend CBT or Wolpian theory, is that 50% of them have a moderate result.
Well,
50 do nothing. 50
up
do
moderate.
nothing. Right.
Yeah.
50 do nothing. And there's probably one or two on the bottom that average out that are having tremendous success. But overall, most don't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just straight up facts. We've done a show before where we showed some scientific metadata on that. So it is what it is. Does CBD help? Yeah, for some people it does. And it's the best they got. That's why they call it the gold standard. It's not because it's really that great. It's because it's the best they got. And it does work somewhat for some people.
So Carrie says
15
hello.
years. It did help me, but only partially. And it took forever.
So Ryan, Carrie says hello in there, and you want to talk about neuroplasticity in action.
Did a session for your wife, just boom. Yeah, you tell us the story.
She is now focused on this business. She is now focused on becoming a travel agent, and she's going to do it. This business of hers is taking off like mad. She's working me into the grave almost.
Yeah.
And her neuroplasticity was changed over the age of 60. So
and
you're
how was
never
she
too
before
old to change.
How was she before compared to now? Now she has a thriving business. She just boom, 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 getting stuff done. How was she before the session?
She suffered from I'm not good enough, mad at her parents for forcing her to do things she didn't want to do, all through that childhood type of thing. That has been relieved, replaced with the knowledge of her true value and worth. And guess what? And I could tell her I love you a million times in 40 years. That cognitive effort never overwhelmed her subconscious underpinnings of I'm not good enough. So she would start businesses, multi-level marketing. She'd get involved, pay the fee, get the kit, get all the paperwork, get folders built, the whole bit, and then stop.
And she did that, 20, 30 times?
Can't even remember how many. It's so many, literally.
And now she just does it. And now
she's
just
successful
on it. Business, sustainably doing what needs to be done.
If you want to see the result of what she has done, we just had dinner this week with a good sized YouTuber named Crafting with Shay. And she's into the diamond painting pen world. It's this craft that people do kind of thing. But Crafting with Shay has 6,700 followers on her YouTube channel. Pretty significant in that world. So Carrie's partnered up with her 7 or 8 months ago. And the result was we went to the Cheesecake Factory, had dinner, presented her with a pen that the whole community designed. And Carrie put this whole thing together. And if you want to watch it, you can go to our YouTube channel, Leopard Leatherworks, and you can see the result of this. And I think we've linked Crafting with Shay's video in there. But it's amazing the difference of wanting to do a bunch of stuff but couldn't get it going to effortlessly making things happen now.
Awesome. Very good. And hey, shout out to everyone, all our loyal watchers. Mike Horton, a longtime follower. How you doing? Same thing with P-Dubs and Ryan Harrison. We already acknowledged, but welcome to the show, guys. And so let's get back to Dr. Huberman here and the gospel of neuroplasticity that he is so eloquently preaching.
Now, this thing that he says next in the next 40, 50 seconds is tremendously important, and we'll focus on that after he says it.
Okay.
Why? And Merzenich and his graduate students and postdocs went on to address this question of why. And it turns out the answer is a very straightforward neurochemical answer. And inside of that answer is the opportunity for any of us to change our brain at any point throughout our lifespan, essentially for anything that we want to learn. That could be subtracting an emotion from an experience we've had.
Right there.
Bingo.
If you do that, if you subtract negative traumatic emotions from certain events or triggers in your life, that's what we did for Carrie. You do that, that can change your life. And most people need to do this. Most people have anxieties or feeling not good enough, or they're just hot-headed. They get angry at a lot of stuff. We can go in, boom. Now, next time that thing comes along that normally triggers you, makes you anxious, whatever, it's gone. Like something very effective is a lot of guys are afraid to approach attractive women to try and get a date, try and get to know that woman later. They're terrified. They're petrified with anxiety. Now, you'll never take that down to zero. We have a little bit of hardwired instinct because back in ancient tribal times, you approached the wrong girl and she had a boyfriend, this big alpha male with a club. He might make guard, hit you over the head, etc. Or maybe the tribe would disapprove. You're not allowed to get that girl. Now he casts you out of the tribe or just whatever. So there is a little like 2 out of 10 anxiety that's just straight up instinct. But if you have like 8, 9 out of 10, you men who have just massive anxiety about approaching attractive women, you can literally, in one session, sometimes it takes a few more, it depends on the person. Listen to the Ryan Apollo or Ryan A interview on my YouTube channel. He did this with self-hypnosis, 8 out of 10 down to 3 out of 10 anxiety with approaching attractive women. Just like that. One session, boom, change. If you guys struggle, this is how you make neuroplasticity. Applying it and using it correctly is the key to get rid of these emotions, these fears, whatever that are holding you back. You can fix it like that. We'll keep going. And just a wide variety of emotions.
I wanted to comment on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
And you said it really well, but when your brain at the age of 25 or maybe even as early as 15 is nearly 98% wired.
Yeah.
After that time, it's like a file cabinet, right? Your file cabinet is full. Nothing else fits in that file cabinet, no matter how hard you try to shove it in there. So what you need to do, and again, we focus on that experience. We remove that, like Ryan and Jordan are talking about, and then you put a new file in there. And guess what? There's no room for the old junk, right? Now you've got a new file that's serving you well. That's what happens. You literally take the bad out, reprogram it, put the good in, and that is like, and the kicker is no memories are gone. What you lose is the emotional tie to that memory that wasn't serving you. Now you have the memory, but it doesn't hurt you.
Yeah. And like it or not, you may say, oh, I'm going to ignore my emotions. Well, you can use a lot of willpower to some degree, overpower your emotions and do what you need to do, but it wears you out. It wears you out. Get rid of that emotion so you don't have any resistance and you have so much more energy to do what you need to do. And, for those people who think their emotions don't matter, they're just flat out ignorant of the fact that they do matter. And they're just completely unaware of how much their lives are ruled, how much our behavior is ruled by our emotions, men and women. Yes, we can overpower them to a degree in very specific moments, but we only have a limited amount of willpower. Like it or not, 95% of our behavior is dictated by our subconscious. So don't be in denial. Don't be ignorant of that fact. Gain that awareness and get your subconscious mind, instead of holding you back or fighting against you because of bad programs in childhood developed there, get it working for you. Get it serving you. You're the master, make it work for you. But you have to be the master, you have to obtain mastery. And this is how it's done. So also Dr. Huberman, he mentions a lot of good stuff in here. He does say that you actually have to get certain things that don't serve you out before the good stuff can come in. So just listening to these, subliminal, hypnosis where it's just putting good suggestions in you or doing affirmations, you're putting good stuff in. If you have contradictory programs in you that are contradicting the good stuff, it won't sink in very much because there's just not room. You got to get rid of the bad, traumatic subconscious programs not serving you. Got to get rid of them first, then put in the good self-belief. So we'll keep going. He says that in here. Yeah, I encourage everyone to watch this whole thing. We're only going through a tiny part of it.
And I'll add one more thing. If I've seen some quote hypnosis audios where they start layering tracks of suggestions on top of each other and playing them at the same time,
That's going to
I
make you
can't
lose focus.
Yeah, the whole point of what Andrew Huberman is talking about is you have to be able to focus on the thing in order to activate neuroplasticity. So having words on top of each other, like jumbled together, that's just somebody who's trying to sell you something.
But
And
it does
actually
sound
makes
very
it less
cool.
effective. It makes
It sounds
ineffective.
cool.
It sounds
But
cool. This
sounds cool,
must
doesn't work
work.
with
It
crap.
sounds great,
Sounds great,
but it
Yeah.
do
doesn't work.
anything. Yeah, it
And
doesn't
so
work at
heads
all.
up if you have experienced that or if you
Yeah.
see that.
All right, we'll keep going. Good point, Jordan.
Could be building a greater range of emotion. It could be learning new information, like learning a new language. It could be learning new motor skill, like dance or sport, or it could be some combination of cognitive motor. So, for instance, an air traffic controller has to do a lot with their mind in addition to a lot with their hands. So it's not just cognitive, it's not just motor, but combined. So we're going to talk about what that chemical is, but to just give you an important hint, that chemical is the same chemical of stress. This is not a discussion about stress per se. In a future podcast episode, we'll talk all about stress and tools to deal with stress. It's something my lab works on quite extensively, and it's a topic that I enjoy discussing.
And actually, our sessions are typically pretty intense for a lot of people.
Yep.
It makes the neuroplasticity activated even more. It's a type of stress. So
Well, I'll say
we're
they're
doing
intense because
psychological surgery. Go ahead.
Well, they're intense because the subconscious programs are intense. They're as intense as the thing we're trying to remove. It's not like that's not a bug. That's the feature.
Yeah, we intensify the negative feelings tied to bad subconscious programs. We take it as high as we can take it.
Yep.
And what's interesting is people who have really we focus on one at a time. A lot of people have 5, 6 dozen bad subconscious programs. We take the ones that are hurting some are very minor of these programs. We take the ones that are the biggest ones, which means you're going to feel the most intense negative feeling. And oftentimes those really huge negative programs tied to these really intense negative feelings are actually the easiest to clear. Because it causes so much stress, it actually makes your brain more neuroplastic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Nothing to add there. Perfectly said.
Yeah. Thank you.
But this is a topic about brain change. And what I just told you is that in order to change the brain, you have to pay careful attention. And the immediate question should be, well, why? Well, the answer is that when we pay careful attention, there are 2 neurochemicals, neuromodulators, as they're called, that are released from multiple sites in our brain that highlight the neural circuits that stand a chance of changing. Now, it's not necessarily the case that they're going to change, but it's the first gate that has to open in order for change to occur. And the first neurochemical is epinephrine, also adrenaline. We call it adrenaline when it's released from the adrenal glands above our kidneys. That's in the body. We call it epinephrine in the brain, but they are chemically identical substances. Epinephrine is released from a region in the brainstem called locus ceruleus. Fancy name. You don't need to know it unless you want to. Locus ceruleus sends out these little wires we call axons such that
I love this guy. He calls himself out on his own TMI, but it's awesome. All right. Dude, this is who he is, man. He's awesome.
it hoses the entire brain essentially in this neurochemical epinephrine. Now, it's not always hosing the brain with epinephrine. It's only when we are in high states of alertness that this epinephrine is released. But the way this circuit is designed, it's very non-specific. It's essentially waking up the entire brain. And that's because the way that epinephrine works by binding particular receptors is to increase the likelihood that neurons will be active.
Yep.
So no alertness, no neuroplasticity. However, alertness alone is not sufficient. As we would say, it's necessary, but not sufficient for neuroplasticity. We know this is true also from the work of Hubel and Wiesel, where they looked at brain plasticity in response to certain experiences in subjects that were either awake or asleep. And I hate to break it to you, but you cannot just simply listen to things in your sleep and learn those materials. Later,
Sorry, guys.
I'll talk about
That's what we were talking about earlier.
how you can do certain things in your sleep that you're unaware of that can enhance learning of things that you were aware of while you were awake, but that is not the same.
So it can reinforce stuff that's already in you, but you can't learn new things while you're sleeping with subliminal messages, etc.
As just listening to some music or listening to a tape while you sleep and expecting it to sink in, so to speak. Epinephrine is released when we pay attention and when we are alert. But the most important thing for getting plasticity is that there be epinephrine, which equates to alertness, plus the release of this neuromodulator, acetylcholine. Now, acetylcholine is released from two sites in the brain. One is also in the brainstem, and it's named different things in different animals, but in humans, the most rich site of acetylcholine neurons, or neurons that make acetylcholine, is the parabigeminal nucleus or the parabrachial region. There are a number of different names of these aggregates of neurons. You don't need to know the names. All you need to know is that you have an area in your brainstem, and that area sends wires, these axons, up into the area of the brain that filters sensory input. So we have this area of the brain called the thalamus, and it is getting bombarded with all sorts of sensory input all the time. Costello's snoring off to my right, the lights that are in the room, the presence.
That's his bulldog. If you listen real close, every now and then you hear his bulldog snoring in the background. It's pretty funny.
Yes.
Of my computer to my left. All of that is coming in. But when I pay attention to something, like if I really hone in on Costello's snoring, I create a cone of attention. And what that cone of attention reflects is that acetylcholine is now amplifying the signal of sounds that Costello is making with his snoring, and essentially making that signal greater than all the signal around it. What we call signal to noise goes up. So those of you with an engineering background will be familiar with signal to noise. Those of you who do not have an engineering background, don't worry about it. All it means is that one particular shout in the crowd comes through, Costello's snoring becomes more salient, more apparent relative to everything else going on. Acetylcholine acts as a spotlight. But epinephrine for alertness, acetylcholine spotlighting these inputs, those two things alone are not enough to get plasticity. There needs to be this third component, and the third component is acetylcholine released from an area of the forebrain called nucleus basalis. If you really want to get technical, it's called nucleus basalis of Minert. For any of you that are budding physicians or going to medical school, you should know that. If you have acetylcholine released from the brainstem, acetylcholine released from nucleus basalis, and epinephrine, you can change your brain. And I can say that with confidence because Merzenich and Reckenzone, as well as other members.
Hypnosis does all of these, which is why I'll replay that Instagram clip at the end, but that's why he says it's neuroplasticity tool. We'll keep going.
Of the Merzenich lab, Michael Kilgard and others, did these incredible experiments where they stimulated the release of acetylcholine from nucleus basalis, either with an electrode or with some other methods that we'll talk about. And what they found was when you stimulate these three brain regions, locus coeruleus, the brainstem source of acetylcholine, and then the basal forebrain source of acetylcholine, when you have those three things, whatever you happen to be listening to, doing, or paying attention to, immediately in one trial takes over the representation of a particular area of the brain. You essentially get rapid, massive learning in one shot.
Yep.
And this,
Boom, right there. One shot. We're not just, when we make these claims, we are not just pulling it out of our ass. This is science. Anything to add, guys?
No, he's on the money. And what's key is that neuroplasticity happens for a time. You reprogram, you get the good in, the bad out. And then once you leave that process, it's no longer available to be changed.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's permanent.
Well, unless you want to, I mean,
Correct.
you can change it if you go back
These
and
are
do the same
permanent
thing.
changes.
But
There is
you have to put
future
yourself back in it.
neuroplasticity if you like, but generally it's a permanent change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One shot, just like he said. Do it. We do it all the freaking time. We do it all the time. I want our audience, ask yourselves, are you trying to make improvements in your life? Are you trying to change behaviors, change habits? Do you struggle with some sort of negative feeling or affect or emotion, whatever you want to call it, that you have a pattern of it negatively affecting you, what are you doing to fix that? Are you doing anything? If you are, how is that working out for you? If it's working out for you, if the techniques you're using are working great, amazing, awesome. But if you're struggling and things you have tried so far isn't quite doing it for you, isn't working, consider this. This is extremely important information we're giving you, and we know how to apply this to people so they actually get the change. Dr. Huberman is theory, and he's fantastic at theory. We are practitioners. Now, we're essentially coaches. We're not psychologists. We're not therapists. But we can coach you how to get into the state, make your brain neuroplastic, focus, and find it's not just getting your brain in this state, but it's knowing what to change in your brain to give you the benefits that you're looking for. If you're struggling with these negative emotions or behaviors or trying to form new habits, break old ones, we apply these techniques to get you that.
And what
That's
Brian's
what we do.
talking about, those
Consider
negative
it.
emotions, anxiety, depression, procrastination, addiction, all that type of stuff. Those are negative driven activities generated by those negative emotions in your body. And none of those activities serve you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we'll keep going a little more. He has, there's so much in here that's good. I mean, guys, watch this whole hour and a half clip. We're getting through maybe 15 minutes of it, but still, this is nuclear powered. You should watch the whole thing.
This has been shown again
The link's in the description for this YouTube clip.
and again and again in a variety of papers, also by a guy named Norm Weinberger from UC Irvine. And it is now considered a fundamental principle of how the nervous system works. So while Hubo and Weasel talked about
Why aren't more practitioners doing it?
Right.
To fix subconscious trauma. I think they're using it to do some changes, like the very, very top end people. But when it comes to subconscious trauma, bad subconscious programs, there's not that many. There's actually very, very few that are. There's a lot of hypnotists, but hypnotists, they're doing things in a very concentrated, specific way and knowing what to focus on and change in your brain. There's not many that work at that level. There's very few, in my opinion, that really put all this together and do it really effectively.
Correct.
about critical periods in developmental plasticity, it's very clear from the work of Merzenich and Weinberg and others that if you get these three things, if you can access these three things of epinephrine, acetylcholine from these two sources, not only will the nervous system change, it has to change. It absolutely will change. And that is the most important thing for people to understand if they want to change their brain. You cannot just passively experience things. And repetition can be important, but the way to use repetition to change your brain is fundamentally different. So now let's talk about how we would translate all this scientific information and history into some protocols that you can actually apply. Because I think
so he talks about some stuff which is actually kind of hard to implement. I mean, he talks about putting, running electrical currents through certain types of your brain. He does mention things like caffeine, nicotine, some other drugs can activate certain parts of your brain. And then he gives a caution. He's like, yeah, but there's downsides to using these too. So be aware of that. You don't need any of those drugs. You don't need any, I would love to get to a point, if possible, where, by the way, I think psychedelics make your brain neuroplastic. Some of them make your brain neuroplastic, or they can, in my opinion. But and some psychedelic journeys are very intense experiences of necessity. I would love to, maybe we can take hypnosis, what we do, and enhance it by running electrical currents, low-level electrical currents through certain parts of your brain, which he talks about. We won't go into that there. The easiest way to make your brain neuroplastic, no drugs needed, no special supplements, no, diode put on a certain part of your brain to run current through it. None of that's needed. You listen to an audio tape or you just book a session with one of us. It's hypnosis. that is the easiest way to do it. And just to kind of remind people of that fact, Andrew Huberman, this guy here, he knows hypnosis is a very effective way to engage neuroplasticity in your brain. We'll play it one more time. I hope the sound's on here.
People think, oh, it's someone trying to control you. Yeah. But hypnosis is really just a state of
you controlling you.
Exactly. It's self-hypnosis is deep relaxation plus suggestion. And what the goal of hypnosis is, you know, we hear about meditation designed to clear the mind, calm you. You hear about yoga, okay, etc. But hypnosis is like a meditation designed to change your brain in a specific way, what we call neuroplasticity.
Boom, right there.
Yep.
It's a tool. He knows it. He knows it works. And one of his colleagues at Stanford is a leading authority in hypnosis. He knows it works. He's done interviews with the guy. Okay, so do you guys have any final thoughts? We're at about an hour in right now.
We have said it, I think.
I have that classic, don't take our word for it, listen to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stanford neuroscientist. He's one of the leading guys in the world on this topic, leading scientist. So that's our show for today. What we say the results we claim we get kind of sounds like magic, kind of sounds like woohoo, like, oh, hypnosis, woohoo. No, there's hard science here, guys. This is, they know this. They just stumble at applying it.
Yes.
But we apply it. And if you want big changes in your life, in your subconscious, so you can just up level, start getting what you want, start just overall being happier, more well-adjusted, this is a huge tool to help you get there. So that's all I have. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Jordan. You guys really do have more power than you know. Try it out. We got a free version you can try on school.com/MindChrysalis-7138. You can do it. You have more power than you know. That's our show. Thank you.